Welcome to the Undercovers Football Podcast. I'm Ben, along with Paul and Connor, and this is, I believe, our first full house show in probably over a month, right?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
back.
been about 5 weeks.
Yeah, because I was out for a little bit, and
You were
then
out, and then
Connor
I
was doing
started.
some ghost tours, so we're
Yeah,
kind
and I
of
happened to have
finally
today
back
off.
to normalcy, minus Jenna, if she ever wants to come on the podcast ever again. But I guess that
She's
would
on
be
long.
to
She's
be
on
determined.
long-term IR.
Yeah, she's on long term IR. Me and Connor were on like short term IR.
Yeah, they didn't even put me on IR. They just said, "Oh, you're inactive for 2 weeks. Move
Yeah,
on.
Yep,
Get on
two
with your
weeks.
bad self." But yeah, it is good to be back because we have a lot to talk about tonight, especially considering the absolutely beautiful win against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday. Beautiful in
yes,
a whole lot more ways than one. As a matter
and
of fact, the title of the video, A Statement Win. Yeah, it was indeed a statement win against a team that looked
and
absolutely poised to uh, take the NFC West crown. But as of
yes,
now,
and me and Connor have a lot of agendas to push tonight after
oh,
the
you're right,
way
I do. You're
one of
right,
our
I do. Look
favorite
at that.
players has been playing the last couple of
You're
weeks.
you're
Yep.
absolutely you're absolutely right, I do.
I'm
I've
ready
been,
just to sit back and listen to that.
I've
Just
been
let you
pushing
guys
this
go off for the next 45 minutes just to talk about that.
I've been pushing this agenda for months. Everybody was so upset when we drafted him, and now I just want to know how all of y'all feel now. How every single one of you that thought it was a bad pick, how do all of y'all feel now? How do all of y'all feel, especially now that he's just getting better and better and better and better as he gets used to this team, as he
And
gets
where are
used to
all
this team?
the worthy truthers?
Yeah, Worthy's looking like the worst rookie wide receiver in the entire class right now.
Yeah, he's looking like he wasn't worthy of that pick. Anyways,
Oh my God, I knew someone
we
would
got
say
a
it.
lot. We got a lot to talk about tonight, so let's get right into it. Starting off with one of our first quick takes of the evening, and Joe Burrow said it is very doable for Cincinnati to win 7 of their last 9 games. Right now, they sit 3-5, so that's really their path to the playoffs. You would think is getting to 10 wins, and they already have 5 losses on the season, so they can't really afford that many more. But based off the way they've played, and even against a depleted Browns team, they really struggled, and that's kind of been Joe Burrow's mo. Like everyone said, the Jets were Josh's kryptonite, which he has quickly dispelled the last couple matchups. But Burrow's got almost a worse kryptonite because I believe he's only beaten Cleveland once so far in his career, and that was a game that they lost Deshaun Watson, and DTR had to finish the game for them, and they didn't even put Jameis Winston in until the game was basically out of reach, and Jameis still was making some magic. But I'll go through their schedule quickly because they've already lost to the Commanders, Chiefs, Patriots, Ravens, Eagles, and is there another team, or was that five? That may have been five, but they already sit at 5 losses on the season. They made me look very dumb in my game pick this week. Thinking those white Bengal Tigers uniforms would be enough to propel them to victory, but obviously it was not the case. But let's assume they beat the Raiders this week because the Raiders are looking pretty sorry right now, and it is a West Coast team playing on the East Coast, which basically is a 10 a.m. game for them. So I'll assume they beat the Raiders, which means they would then have to win 6 of 8. But it doesn't necessarily get easier for them because they then go at Baltimore, which they almost beat Baltimore. The game did go to overtime, but Baltimore has since loaded up on offense. So that could still be a challenging game. And I know all the Bengal fans wanted to make it seem like it's not a thing that Lamar owns them, but when Lamar's been healthy,
Uh,
he has owned the Bengals. And then they go to the Chargers, who I get it. The Chargers, they don't have a ton of talent on paper, but it's starting to look like Herbert is finally getting acclimated to the Roman system, and McConkey is starting to look like the player a lot of us thought he would be, including me, because I was a very big Led McConkey fan, as I think you were, Connor, as well. Paul, I know you weren't so high. You weren't so McConkey, but I was a big McConkey fan. They play the Steelers, which will definitely be a tough game, a divisional AFC North battle against a Steelers team, which has kind of found some mojo with Russ behind center. They play at Dallas on Monday night, which let's say they beat them just because Dallas hasn't looked too strong. After that, the Titans, that's very winnable. But then the Browns, if Jameis keeps, doing his thing like that, that might be a trap game for them. And then Broncos, I don't think that Broncos game is as easy as when Bengals fans first looked at their schedule at the beginning of the season. Bo Nix is starting to play with more confidence. That defense is better, and it looks like he's finally getting some connection with his playmakers. And they finish up at Pittsburgh, which, I mean, that could very well be for one of the final playoff spots. But do you really think Burrow is going in there with Renegade playing and TJ Watt staring him down and getting that dub? Like, to me, I see about three. I'll go 3 wins for sure, which would put them at 6. But there's a ton of games which I would say would be a toss-up between the Ravens, Chargers, Steelers, Browns, Steelers twice for that matter, and Broncos. Like they got to come away with 2 losses out of those. And I mean, the Browns very well may get the better of them. I thought this Bengals team would be better, and I know the slow starts, usually they've been able to, shrug them off and rattle off a bunch of wins, but you can't do that every single year. And I think this Bengals team isn't as talented as years past. The offense still can do its thing, but even the offense has kind of looked sluggish at times. Like they only put up 21 against Cleveland, 17 the week before against the Giants, 17 against Philly. And I mean, Philly's defense has really not been good by any stretch this season. I know they're missing T. Higgins, but I'm going to go no. I don't think Cincinnati is able to find that magic. I don't think they can win 7. Maybe they'll win 5 or 6, but that's where I'm putting Cincinnati.
There you go. Yeah, and that's very reasonable because the AFC North just eats itself alive all the time. Look at how the Ravens lost to the Browns. I could have probably told you that one was coming just because of how the AFC North plays each other. So you'll have the moments where the Ravens look like they shouldn't even be in contention for anything when it comes to the AFC North, but then they'll play somebody outside the AFC North and they'll do to them what the Ravens unironically did to us. So that's the thing about the AFC North. Like the Bengals may look good against those other teams, but once they play anybody from the AFC North, that's just it. They're done. They'll be lucky if they don't just come out of that game battered, bruised, and bloodied because that's just how the AFC North does. That's why the Browns beat the Ravens. That's why the Bengals could probably beat the Browns. That's why the Browns could probably beat the Steelers. All that kind of meshing together and just looking raw weird. So the AFC North's a toss-up. Even if you gave the Bengals the rest of those wins, just have to see how they do in that wild AFC North. And that goes for the Steelers and Ravens as well. I actually wouldn't doubt that whoever is consistent enough in the AFC North might win that division, which means it could very well be the Steelers winning that division.
I mean, if I was to pick a winner now, I get it. The Ravens just, acquired, ironically, a former Raven receiver in Deontay Dropson. But I think the Steelers' defense is better. And I think in a matchup, I mean, Lamar Jackson has not fared very well against Pittsburgh the last couple of seasons. And that's even with the likes of Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky in at quarterback. I get it. They never had a Derrick Henry, but the Steelers' run defense is a little concerning. So, I mean, that could be a matchup they exploit, but it will be interesting to see how this AFC North shakes out because, I mean, if you actually look at the Browns' schedule, their schedule is actually starting to soften up a little bit. Like, I know they just have a 4% chance to make the playoffs, but if Jameis keeps playing the way they did, I mean, they host the Chargers this week. That will be a tough one. But if you can beat the Chargers, they then have the Saints, Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, and then the Chiefs, which will be very tough. But, I mean, if they can win 4 or 5 of those games, like, they'll be sitting at something like 6-7, 7-6, depending. Like, I mean, they have a possibility to at least maybe claw their way back in a little bit, and then they finish with the Bengals, Dolphins, and Ravens, and I mean, those are kind of winnable games for them. So if they can take care of their divisional games, like who's to say Jameis Winston can't cause some late season matchup or magic in Cleveland, a la Joe Flacco, who actually
Oh man.
is our next quick take, so we can segue right there.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Joe Flacco has went from the Browns, helping the Browns get to the playoffs, to possibly helping the Indianapolis Colts find a way back into the AFC South and possibly into the playoffs. But then there's Aaron Rodgers, at the other hand, who has the Jets at 2-6 through 8 games. No, Zach Wilson through 8 games last year had the Jets at 4-4. So Connor, I want to give you this: who has the worst quarterback situation currently right now? The Jets with Rodgers or Richardson and Indy?
The Jets with Rodgers, and I'll explain why really quickly. You can't just bench Aaron Rodgers because he's basically acting like the LeBron James of the NFL right now. He basically runs the team. It is pretty much the reason why Nathaniel Hackett was not let go from his position, but Robert Saleh was. So you can't just tell this guy, "Oh, we're going to bench you because you've been playing terrible." Because at that point, you also brought in Devontae Adams because he wanted to play with Aaron Rodgers. What does that tell Devontae Adams? Oh, this organization don't care. This organization's a dumpster fire. At least with the Colts, they said they're not giving up on Anthony Richardson, and they shouldn't. The man was injured his rookie year, and he's been dealing with a plethora of injuries this year. So at the end of the day, you can't really just give up on Anthony Richardson because of a couple of quick injuries that have just been unfortunate. Give the man some time to heal and just let Joe Flacco take over. So at the moment, the Colts are actually in all right shape. I mean, it, uh, I almost said Andrew Luck. I was thinking about him. Joe Flacco, if you're listening, can you just target Josh Downs and target him often? Because I have him on my fantasy bench.
Josh
Please.
Downs is an absolute dog, by the way. I
I know.
knew it coming out of the draft. Like, I know we looked out with Kincaid, but man, imagine if we could have gotten him and Kincaid. I know he's mostly a slot, but he can play on the outside. And yeah, I agree with you. The Jets, it's definitely a lot bleaker because I love my guy JT, but he was a
Same.
fifth round pick for a reason. Like, he
The
doesn't
leg.
have the freak it. That's a big part, but he
The
doesn't
leg.
have
It's only the leg.
No, he doesn't have the freakish physical tools that Anthony Richardson has. His arm isn't obviously like that. I mean, he can move, but Anthony Richardson is. I mean, there's no Josh Allen or Cam Newton, but if you were to find something, closest prospect wise, it would probably be Anthony Richardson. And yes, I get it. It is kind of a disservice to effectively bench him very young. He hasn't even made 10 starts yet. And this does almost give me shades of the EJ Manuel experience.
Oh,
If you can
no.
go back, I know he's another FSU guy, but remember, he started out 2-2, but he was starting to struggle. The Bills had Kyle Orton there, and they basically said, look, we can't win games with this quarterback right now, and we have a roster that is playoff caliber, and the defense is starting to play better. They have weapons. I mean, their offense clearly runs better with Flacco, and to me, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for him to sit and learn behind a true pro like Flacco, because look at Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, his first year, sat under Flacco for a number of games and learned a lot, and he was ready to come in, when Flacco started to struggle. So, I mean, if Flacco starts struggling, I think that's when you go back to Richardson. But I don't think it's the end of Richardson's career. But
Oh, no
last
way.
year, he missed a lot of reps, and let's call a spade a spade. Minshew, he can make some plays at times, but that's not the vet quarterback you want to be learning behind. So for Anthony Richardson, he can pick up a lot more by actually sitting on the bench, because you also remember last year he had shoulder surgery, so he wasn't directly in all of the meetings at practice, in the film room necessarily, or on the sidelines for every single game. He may have been towards the end of the season, but I think it's good to let Richardson sit a little bit. But I mean, just going back to the Jets, Rodgers it looks totally done. I mean, at least the Colts, I think, have something in Flacco if they want to at least make some noise and make the playoffs. But I think the Jets stick a fork in them. But we have a trivia question for the night before we go into
Do we?
the Bills
We
topic,
don't. We
because
don't
I
have a
just saw.
trivia.
Okay, just wondering. So I guess we'll go into our Bills discussion for the evening. What was most impressive in the Bills' victory over Seattle? And to me, I get it. Seattle was a little undermanned on offense, missing DK Metcalf, but I mean they still have Zach Charbonnet. They still have almost a Christian Walker, Kenneth Walker. They still have Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Geno Smith has played all right at times. Not Sunday, but that was because the Bills' defense just was suffocating that entire game. Yes, they had a couple goal line opportunities. One was set up on that interception that Amari Cooper just slipped on, but Josh ultimately saved a touchdown. And I mean, I know part of it you could say was Geno slipping or the snap, but the Bills' defense came to play that entire game. They forced turnovers. There was constant pressure on Geno Smith. Like, I was impressed with that defense, especially I know Atlanta doesn't have much of a defense, but they still put up 34 points on the road in Atlanta. And I mean, Seattle's kind of been able to score on almost everyone this year to an extent. So I was impressed with what I saw with the defense, especially considering Terrell Bernard was hurt and we're still without uh, Von Miller, and Dwayne Carter just got hurt. And I mean, Seattle can run the ball. I was expecting Seattle to still be able to move the ball, and I mean, they did at times, but the defense was just pretty much suffocating throughout the game. So that's what I was most impressed with. The total defensive performance from start to finish from me. Because I mean, the game started, 3 plays, 3 and out, and I mean, they didn't score until it was 31-3. So the game was very much out of hand at that point. And, we played our patented McDermott prevent defense, but it didn't matter because there wasn't enough time for Seattle, to mount a miraculous comeback at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually really one thing that you mentioned, Ben, that I really agree with. In particular, it's the fact that the run defense showed up. I was so afraid of Kenneth Walker just running all over us that I actually started him in my fantasy lineup because I thought I was going to have a monster game-winning or week-winning day from Kenneth Walker. And thankfully, the Bills decided to prove me very wrong. And that made me very happy in a way. So the fact that we were able to tighten up in the run defense is great, especially considering who we'll have to be facing later on in the season, especially considering by the time that we face the 49ers, they should have Christian McCaffrey back, which will definitely be, in terms of just running back alone, will be the toughest test that we face since Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry when we played the Ravens. So that's a very crucial part of our game that we've stepped up on considerably, and we just need to carry that into the next game, considering now we're going against the very, very potent two-headed tandem that is Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. So what we have to do is we have to make sure that we're basically implementing the same game plan, but on top of not just making sure we could stop Achane and Mostert, get to Tua. Tua is a much different quarterback when you rattle him compared to Geno Smith. We saw in the game where we were able to rattle Geno Smith, and Geno was still able to cork it downfield for someone like JSN or Tyler Lockett or just anyone. So what we have to make sure we can do is get to Tua enough to where we get another one of those Jamarcus Ingram moments where he's in so much pressure, he tries to throw the ball away. He doesn't quite get it all the way out of bounds, and it just happens to fall right into the hands of someone like Taron Johnson or, shoot, even DeMar Hamlin. That'd be pretty great. But that's my take on it. We just need to keep the momentum going. We're getting, after this game, it was the Titans, the Dolphins, then we got the Colts, if I remember correctly. I mean, we've got very winnable games, for a while until we get
Kansas City, San Francisco,
until we get
Detroit,
to the Kansas City stretch.
LA.
That'll be a rough one. That'll be the stretch that determines whether this team is truly a Super Bowl contender or just a fringe playoff contender, depending on how we can do in that stretch of 4 games. Now, the Niners game might actually, weirdly enough, be the easiest of the 4 because of their injuries, but you still can't underestimate them. You can't underestimate anybody, especially a team like the Dolphins, who we play this week, who we've considerably owned in the past. And yeah, I've actually got an article for Bills on SI coming out about that soon. How you can't underestimate anyone in the league, even if it's a team that you've absolutely owned, pretty much put a Bills flag in Highmark Stadium, even though we're playing, or not Highmark Stadium, you know what I mean, in Hard Rock Stadium, because we'll be in Highmark this week. So that was the last bit I had on that. What was the next topic of
Well,
discussion?
Paul needed to do his most important,
Oh yeah, that's right.
most
Paul, go ahead.
impressive thing from the game.
I'm going to agree with you guys. I mean, the run defense, this week only held, Kenneth Walker to 32, and that entire Seahawks run gain to 32 yards. So the week before that, they shut down the Titans defense. I mean, running offense, and they held them to 89 yards. What I'm going to say the most impressive point of this game is, even though Amari Cooper didn't make an impressive box score outcome, it feels like the Amari Cooper effect has came in a different way this week. Last week he light up the box score. This week he allowed Shakir, Coleman, Kincaid, Knox all get open and separate. I mean, Dawson Knox had 5 yards of separation on Sunday. Shakir had almost 5 yards of separation. He had 4.7 yards of separation on Sunday. Dalton Kincaid had 3.5 yards of separation. And Keon Coleman had 2.4 yards of separation. And Keon Coleman has been averaging right around 2-ish yards, right around 2-ish yards for most of the season. So the Amari Cooper effect is affecting the Bills offense in a different way than what it looks like in the box score. For the Bills, it's allowing these guys to get open in many different ways. And you could also maybe say you credit Keon Coleman because he's starting to take the next step, and teams are starting to put, maybe their cornerback 1 or quarterback 2 on Keon, and that allows,
Good.
Shakir to get a better matchup against a Seattle secondary or even a Miami secondary this week, and it opens the middle of the field for Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox.
Ooh, you know what that means. I know Ben's going to probably think of it the same way. Put Keon Coleman on Jalen Ramsey. You got a little bit of FSU on FSU violence.
Yes, I'm very much in favor of that.
I would be too, because I have a feeling Keon is going to absolutely moss him.
I mean, you saw what Marvin Harrison Jr. did against him on Sunday, so I'd like to see what Keon's got up his sleeve. And moving on to our final topic about the Seattle game, we have our players of the game, or standout player from Week 8, and I'm going to keep it with the Keon Coleman discussion because he had arguably his best game of the season. That catch on almost at Witherspoon on Woolen, their other corner, who isn't just any corner. He's the biggest corner in the NFL. So that would hypothetically be Keon's toughest matchup, in a red zone fade situation. And that's something Josh really hasn't thrown to him this season. I know he threw that back shoulder one against the Titans, which I still think was a touchdown in my opinion, but the refs wanted to rob Keon Coleman of Rookie of the Year apparently, so they're going to try to take away his statistics. But, the first play, Woolen, denied him, but then it just goes to show you the trust that Josh Allen has with the rookie already. I mean, it's taken a couple weeks, but each week it is grown. And yes, there was another play down the sideline Keon could have been able to make, but late in the game, he made that same type of catch, which set up, I believe, either a field goal or a touchdown. And then the blocking he did, he just took Job, however you say it, soul and pointed down at him. I mean, one time he blocked him out of bounds so badly that he nearly started a fight. Like everything we knew Keon could bring to the table coming out, contested catchability, highlight reel catchability, just nasty blocking. And even in the screen game, I believe it was either first and 20 or second and 20. And they set up another wide receiver screen to Keon, which we didn't really see that often before the Jets game. But it's something that Keon could definitely do and excel at because of his after the catch ability. I talked about it last week, but he's one of the best. I think he has the second most yards after catch among receivers, maybe besides Khalil Shakir. I'll have to
Mhm.
check my next gen stats, but I believe he still has the most yards over expected after the catch.
Yeah, it's up there for sure.
Let me do some stat digging. You guys can get to your standout players because I got some. I think I got some juicy stuff for y'all. So stay tuned.
I have some Keon Coleman stats with me right now. Him among rookies. I mean, not the rest of the NFL here, but I have Keon Coleman
He,
at fourth in receiving yards among rookies. He's just
yep.
4 yards shy of 400 on the season. He's sixth in receptions this among rookies. He's 20. That's 21 receptions on the year. He's eighth in targets among rookies. That's 34 targets. He's first in average catch, and that's 18.9 yards per catch. And he's fourth in TDs. That's 3 touchdowns this season for Keon Coleman. And it only will get better for Keon Coleman from week 9 to the end of the
Mhm.
season. And
Yup.
I think all three of us have collectively have talked about this, at an extent, during the off season at the certain parts of this of the regular season is that we all knew that the offense was going to struggle at a certain point this season, but
Mhm.
it's what they would that the offense was going to do after they struggle. And we're starting to see that. They went through that 2, 3, 4 week phase where we're like, okay, the offense needs starts figuring something out. They figured it out. Yes, Amari Cooper does help, but here we are. We're starting to see what the full Joe Brady plan is for the offense, and it's starting to work. Yes, it's a little bit of a softer schedule the last few weeks, but it doesn't matter. We're starting to see what this offense can do. They're starting to blend. And, from here on out, I think, the Bills could possibly have one of the best offenses heading into the postseason.
So real quickly before, I don't know if you still have to give your standout player, Paul, and I know Connor has his, but real quickly, Keon Coleman right now is averaging 9.2 yards after catch per reception, which puts him third in the NFL, second among wide receivers, only behind Jamison Williams. He's actually still number three overall in yards after catch. No, actually, he's second in the league overall. My apologies. In yards after catch over expectation per reception. So the only one who's having more yards after catch above expectation is Tyler Johnson on the Rams. So just to kind of put it in perspective on his 9.2 yards after catch per reception, compared to the guy who he replaced in Duval, Gabe Davis only is averaging 2.6 yards after catch per reception.
Eesh.
So that's like a 6.5 or maybe like a 6 yard difference per catch,
Right
that
Ouch.
on
is.
there.
And he also has a negative yards after catch above expectation. So basically, he's getting tackled before he's expected to, which is not good by any stretch. I don't mean to necessarily shit on Gabe Davis or anything. I'm just kind of put into perspective because a lot of people thought we wouldn't be able to replace Gabe, even though we upgraded with Keon. Connor, let's hear your standout player, and then we can
You
get
know
into
what?
our trade talk.
Absolutely. And you know what? I am going to make this a little quick because it's actually a little more unorthodox because there's plenty of standout players. Obviously, there's James Cook who performed really, really well. Ran
Shakir.
the
Yes,
ball
that's another
incredibly
one I
well.
forgot.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir, obviously. Greg Rousseau absolutely had himself a monster day on the defense. But there is a little bit of an unorthodox way I'm going about this. You know who my standout player of the week actually is? And I'll explain why in a minute. It's Amari Cooper. And I know Amari
Okay.
didn't have a lot of big numbers on the stat sheet. As a matter of fact, he had like next to nothing on the stat sheet. compared to other receivers, but that's just it. The fact that Amari Cooper's out there, he is drawing the defense down to follow him wherever he goes, which is allowing guys like Shakir to get more looks around the field. It's allowing Keon to get more looks elsewhere. The defense is converging around the area where Amari Cooper is because they watch Amari Cooper go off in his first game with the Bills and they go, oh man, this guy is about to be really good. We got to put a little more effort into covering this man, or at least covering the area of the field where he's supposed to be. Well, once they start doing that and Amari starts kind of throwing him off a little bit, that just leaves Shakir wide open. That just leaves Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, even Dawson Knox, as we saw against the Seahawks, wide open. And another thing it does is it actually contributes a lot to the success of James Cook in the ground game because they're always afraid that Amari's going to find a lane and be gone. So even if they try to look for James Cook, they always have to keep an eye on Amari Cooper. And because they have to keep such an eye on Amari Cooper, that just allows the lanes to open and James Cook takes off. So that's why Amari Cooper is ironically my standout player of the game. Not for what he did on the field, but for what he brings to the field. It wouldn't be me if I didn't give an absolutely unorthodox take for my first time back in a while. So
let's hear yours, Paul. So
that's that.
So we can get into our trade talk.
You know, I think I'm going to give this week to Khalil Shakir because what he has done thus far this season, and you know what he did in Seattle is just what it just brings the entire wide receiver room, you know, together. You know, Khalil Shakir has the best catch percentage among wide receivers this year, 94% catch percentage. The next wide receiver doesn't come to number 26 on that ranking. So he is out of the top 25. He's the only wide receiver with the best catch percentage in the NFL. Just let
That's
that
really
sink
good.
in just for a few minutes. And then he's just his ability just to pick up yak,
Yak.
to catch the ball 2-3 yards behind the line of scrimmage and just bolt down the field. And he had nine yards of yak on Jesus on against Seattle. So just his all round ability for Khalil Shakir, it just brings, you know, a secret weapon that we all thought Shakir could have brought this season, and he's just taking it to the next level. And Joe Brady has just unlocked it in a different way that, you know, I don't think. I mean, I thought he was going to be mainly just a slot guy. You know, you targeted him a few times over the middle of the field and go, but we're using him on screens. We're using him on passes behind the line of scrimmage. So his ability just opens up this offense and, you know, use different plays and concepts has been amazing thus far this season. And that's why he's the standout player for me for right now.
I like how we've all got so very different standout players.
And they're all
Even-
wide receivers. I love it. And everyone said that was going to be an issue going into the season. I know the Bills did make a move. And speaking of moves, the NFL trade deadline is fast approaching. It looks like we got a bit of an arms race going on in the AFC. I know the Jets were trying to make some noise with the Adams move, which subsequently fell on their face. But if you just look at what the Bills' biggest rivals are doing right now, the Chiefs have already made 2 trades. They kind of needed to get Hopkins out of necessity just due to having an extremely depleted wide receiver room. But, I mean, that's going to get healthier eventually. So they're going to, at some point, have potentially Worthy, Hopkins, potentially Brown, and even Juju if he gets back, which is a solid 1, 2, 3, 4. And their defense has been playing very solid. And they got Josh Uche for basically a pack of chips. Now, I know any of us can't really be too upset with that, other than New England trading with the Chiefs of all teams. But I knew that New England wasn't going to deal in the division. So it's not like I can be upset that the Bills didn't make the move because there are still moves to be made, which we will get into very shortly. But that poses – and then the Ravens obviously added Deontay Johnson today. But that poses a question. Do the Bills need to make a move this deadline? And I'm going to start it off by saying even though I know being said this was supposed to be not a down year, but kind of a reset year to get the cap right and everything, he kind of showed by going out and getting Amari Cooper that he believes that it's still wide open to an extent. But looking at how the other AFC teams countered, obviously we're going to get more healthy once we get Bond back and Milano, but I still think there are some needs on this team. And if this team is serious about making a bowl run, I think they should go out and make another move, in my opinion, to solidify the defense. I know Cooper Cup is a pipe dream. I don't think it's
Big one.
necessary. The offense looks very solid as is, but to me, if the Bills are serious about potentially winning a Super Bowl this season, and they should be because it is very open, I would go out and make another move because there are teams that are obviously selling, and you don't want to fall behind the eight ball with Kansas City and Baltimore. So before the trade deadline, what do you guys think whether or not the Bills need to make another move? Because I think they do.
Paul.
Defensively, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Defensively, I think they have to make another move. Offensively, no. I think the offensive acquisition, grab another wide receiver, grab another running back, whatever. I think that's
No.
out the window.
Hmm.
That's been out the window since Tennessee.
Yep.
The last 2 weeks, that's already out the window. I don't think the Bills are going to be, there's the report out there that the Bills called on for Cooper Cup, but
Yeah, that's
it's
just
I
being
don't think it's going to happen.
doing due diligence.
Defensively, they have to make a move. I think
Hmm.
on the defensive line is where I would go, but I also would prioritize safety.
Yep.
And, Dwayne Carter's going to be out for about 4 weeks. He could be out to about 6 weeks.
Any on
So
IR.
you get a
Yes.
short-term rental
Hmm.
for now that would help the defensive line just a little bit more. Where I want to go is safety. You
Hmm.
know, Even though Hamlin has played relatively well this year, Rapp has been playing out of his mind this year as well. The question is Mike Edwards. Why haven't we used him? Well, maybe he's just either just hasn't looked good in the times he's played, or it's just he's just still recovering from injuries. So shore up the safety position
Hmm.
for the rest of the season because you're going to be playing a lot of teams that are going to be probably going to be focused on pass heavy offense and but also will also help shore up the run defense, I think, just a little bit.
Yep.
Matt Milano is going to come back. And then we've been talking about this for like at least the last 3 weeks now. When Matt Milano comes back, you could use three linebacker sets. But what does three linebacker sets do? It takes away a safety. So if you want to really, really feel confident in running three linebacker sets, you're going to have a safety that you are confident and sure in. And I don't think the Bills currently have that. They're confident in two safety sets, but are they confident in going to one safety set with the current roster they have constructed? I don't think that they're 100% confident in that.
Buda Baker, where you at?
What do you
You
think?
up? Well, I think everybody knows what I think because I've been a little loud regarding a very particular player to come to Buffalo because his team kind of sucks right now. Miles Garrett, where are you at, my guy? I know they talk. I know someone actually did post what kind of cap constraint it would be to trade for Miles Garrett, and it did not look like it was actually that bad for 2024. But the thing to consider is if Cleveland actually really was serious about just saying forget Deshaun Watson's contract and blew the whole thing up and went to rebuild for what would probably be the 551st time in the last 20 years, then what? I mean, Miles Garrett would be a very key piece to any future rebuild. It's just a matter of would Miles Garrett actually want to participate in a team going through another rebuild like Cleveland? I mean, if the answer is no, then you got to make a call. Like someone else is going to make that call. Someone else is going to get him. And if it ain't us, why not? Like, make the call,
So
figure it out, do whatever you have to do until they're like, oh, we want Josh Allen. Then tell them, haha, hang up. Like,
So,
I
Okay.
feel
in your
like
opinion, we do need
get
to
him
make a
here.
move then?
Yeah, yes, especially on defense. Like, get a guy like Sebastian Joseph Day, even just to shore up the
D
defensive
line.
front. Yep,
Yes.
exactly. Get him here, or if you could really find a way to get Miles Garrett here, please get Miles Garrett here. You get Miles Garrett here, and it will be the defensive equivalent to us getting if we would have gotten Devontae Adams on the Bills, it would have been basically it'll be like that,
I mean,
except
we
on the
got a
defensive
better
side if we
player,
get Miles
Cooper.
Garrett. We really did, though. Let's be completely
So,
honest.
so that kind of answers our next question, which is potential trade targets. So Connor's eyeing Miles Garrett
Connor
and
gave up
Sebastian Joseph
4.
Day,
Mhm.
and
Yep,
he
yep.
did kind
And
of
Buda
steal
Baker.
one from me. Yes, Buda Baker. So I'll counter with another edge rusher, and this is a guy who
Oh,
would be cheaper on the cap. Unfortunately, he's a free agent, and the way he's
uh-oh.
playing, it might be a little bit expensive because he does have 5 sacks in the last 3 games, to total 6 on the season. But I'm looking at Aziz. I don't know if I pronounced that
Oh,
right, or Aziz
yeah.
Ojolari.
Aziz.
Yes,
He
yes.
has been
Hook.
balling recently. Is on a rookie
Yes.
deal, so that would obviously be a lot friendlier on the Bills cap. They could still
Mhm.
potentially
Mhm.
work out potentially a short-term
Hook.
deal in the offseason.
Mhm.
But if they just need a pure pass rush specialist, that's a guy to target. Now, per ProFootballRumors.com, I'm not sure how reliable they are, but it does say the Giants are setting high prices on both him and Slayton. But obviously, we don't
Okay.
need a receiver. But there is some familiarity, of course, between Joe Shane and Brandon Bean. So maybe he'll give a friend's discount or something, just hoping. If they aren't able to strike a deal, I still like to stick with the pass rush element. I know Clowney's name has been tossed around, even though he does only have one
Oh,
sack on the
God.
season.
Stop it.
But how about another one? I believe he's now up to 5 on the season in Zadarius Smith.
Oh,
Cleveland's
yeah.
selling, so if you can't get the one edge rusher from Cleveland,
If you
why
can't.
not make a call
Mhm.
about Zadarius Smith? He has 5 on
Oh,
the
just all
season.
about both.
He is right. He has familiarity, with Lamar Jackson playing the division. Actually got a sack on him last year, so I know we weren't able to get much pressure on Lamar. Now, if you really want a defensive lineman and you're not going for an edge rusher because we're getting Von back, you could potentially see if Dalvin Tomlinson is available too from Cleveland on the interior. So I'll go with 3. I know it's not what you wanted from this answer, Paul, but let's hear
As
your
many
trade
guys as you
target.
can get, it's great. I
Yeah,
mean,
All of
just
them.
screw it.
All of
if
Let's
the
trade
Bills
the
had
whole
more than
draft
50,
next year for
defense
it's a
wins
whole new
championships.
a whole new 53-man roster we're bringing in besides
there you
Shotgun,
go.
of
Except,
course.
yeah, there you
Coleman.
go. Yep, there you go. All right,
So
Okay,
Paul, let's
so
hear it.
what I'm
let's
getting
hear
from
what you
this
got
from
cooked up.
you two, what I'm getting from this from you two is that you would give would you go how far in an extent would you guys feel comfortable in going giving up picks? Ojolari is going to cost a lot, but are you willing to give up maybe one of your 2 second rounders this year for
Ooh.
Ojolari plus
Yes.
I would
3 other
say
picks?
no, I don't think you need to give up three other picks
Well,
for
maybe not
Ojolari.
for
I think I
Ojolari.
think I think Ojolari, the most you would maybe send is a 2, but he is on a contract year, so I think you can maybe try to work out compensation to see if you can get about a third round value to get him in the building. I mean, I would potentially do a 2 if he's willing to sign an extension, but I don't really want to give up one of our 2 2s for a rental because then we're left with just 2 picks in the first
Oh, yeah.
3 rounds next year. But if you can get an impactful player like that and get him under contract, I really have no issues giving up a 2 because then you don't really need to draft an edge rusher next year. And I mean, depending on how Group plays, he might just play out his 5th-year option, and then you reset the edge room after that. But do you have anyone else on your mind, Paul?
I'm going to give you a couple safety options because you guys went
Okay,
on D-line, so I'm going to give you the side that I was thinking. Buda Baker's obviously the obvious answer, like the Bills
that's like
should
the
go get, but
prize.
it's not
Yep,
going to. It's it's
not
going
gonna
to
be
be
cheap.
hard on the cap, so I
Yes.
don't think that will happen. The cheapest, most impactful player that I kind of found that I found that is also on an expiring contract this year is Hufanga out in San Francisco. he hasn't played much this season at the safety position. He's only played in a few amounts of games. I believe he only has played in 8% of the snaps. But last year he played 96% of the snaps. He had 95 tackles and 4 interceptions.
But he
The year
is
prior
coming
to
off a
that, he had
torn ACL.
Yeah, that's a very big red flag.
Yeah.
so
Why do you think my
one,
Jalen
I
Phillips
did
to
not
my
know the injury
to
concern
Buffalo
there.
train died?
Okay.
Why
Let's
do you
see.
think
You have
my
anyone else?
But I do. How
oh
about
Let's.
the honey badger out in
Ooh, I kind of
what
like
out in New
that.
what
Orleans?
Yes, I
you
kind
think
of
he's
like that
really going to
actually.
leave? I mean, you think he's going to
Why
leave?
not? He's on an affordable deal from
To
what
be fair,
I've
the Saints
Yes.
seen,
are kind of
and
bad.
the Saints are just terrible. Like you don't think especially him being a
Started
former
2-0.
Chief. You don't think he would want to get revenge on his former team for bringing in bum-ass Justin Reed to replace him? Because Justin
I
Reed
mean,
really has not been good.
he could want to go back. That's the other
Thing
thing
with
to think
Matthew,
about.
Nah,
though,
they don't need safeties like that in Kansas City. Because they
Yeah,
got
well, it is
Brian
Kansas
Cook,
City. They might
they
just
have
do it to do
Hayden
it.
Hicks. Yeah, I guess that's true. But go on, Paul.
the issue with Matthew is that he's due $11 million the following year. So
Cut
That's a
him
lot of
you
after.
money.
would be chipping into next year's cap if
Just
you
cut
would
him.
go out and
Boom.
get a guy.
Rental. Just pure rental. Trade
That's
for
our
him, win a
yeah.
Super Bowl, and cut him. Boom.
At
And
least
wash your
he's
hands clean.
oh man. Well, at least he's got himself a Super Bowl.
Let's get into our game picks now, and let's
Ooh,
see.
yeah.
Yes.
Did I move up again, or is Connor catching up again after last week?
How about this? We're all tied.
What?
We're all back.
Wow,
Oh my god.
that is crazy.
Do we
Connor,
all
you
know
had
ball?
the best week out of all of us, and me and Ben were flipped. I went 5-4. Ben, you went 4-5, and Connor
I
was
went a
just about
little
a game
risky
or
on
two
some.
better, and we all ended up being 23-20 after this week, and they're
See,
Wow.
7-6 this week.
I just know ball. See, apparently I know this part. I know this part of ball better than my fantasy teams because I lost in 2 leagues.
Well, we all know the same amount of ball apparently based
Yeah,
on
we're even now,
the
I guess.
standings.
Yep, we're even.
All right,
So
let's
let's
it's go time,
let's
ain't
start
it?
with the
this.
Thursday night slate because this is interesting if you're a Bills fan. Because one, if New York loses and you beat the Miami Dolphins this week, it could really just fit up the division heading into Thanksgiving, honestly. But if you want Houston to win and to lose, it will help in the seeding because
Mhm.
you already think the Bills should have the divisions all sealed up in a few
I'm
weeks.
not worried
So
about the division anymore, really. So I probably will somehow root for the Jets, maybe just more so out of pity, because it seems like that fan base has finally given up. But I still don't see them winning. Even given the amount of injuries right now on that Houston roster, I still don't see it. I know it's a short week. The Jets are still somehow favored, but give me the Texans.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, this is the ideal hate watch because no matter what happens, the Bills win. You either get a larger gap in the division, or you jump the Texans in terms of playoff seeding. So at the end of the day, it is a successful hate watch, no matter how you slice it. But in terms of the game itself, I know the Texans' injuries are definitely starting to mount up a little bit. Nico Collins, now Stephon Diggs, which by the way, definitely wish all the best for Stephon. Hope he recovers and gets back to 100% next season, wherever he goes. But I think at some point the amount of injuries in Houston will catch up, but I definitely don't think it's going to be this week because of who they're playing. I'm taking the Texans.
No, you
And
said this
plus, I
is
don't
the
want to root for the
ultimate hate
Jets.
watch. You said this was the ultimate hate watch, Connor.
Yep.
That's what makes this game the most strategic game for game picks. This is you want one team to win for a reason and you want the other team to win for a reason. So that
Well, they
means it
could
comes
tie.
down to strategy. How do you win game picks this week? You pick the better team. That's the Houston Texans. Flat out,
Yeah, I'm
Houston's the
not
better
Yep.
team.
picking out of emotion for this type of
Yep.
game.
No,
Even
neither
though
am I.
I probably
Yeah.
want the Houston Texans to win, I'm going the Jets to win from that aspect.
Mhm.
But I think the Texans win. All
I
right,
think
next
they will
game.
too.
Next game is it features two teams that are currently in the playoffs, and one of them is currently matched up for if the playoffs started today, the Bills would have to host the Denver Broncos. Broncos go on the road to Baltimore this week. Do they pull
Oh
the upset or does
God.
Baltimore stay handy?
Now, I think this game is going to stay pretty close just because of Denver's defense and Baltimore's defense kind of being a little shorthanded. But that being said, I don't see the Ravens losing back-to-back games after that loss last week. I think they'll have some more urgency, so give me Baltimore. Even though I think Denver's playing a lot better now.
I mean, why are we all of a sudden on Denver? Because remember who they played last week? I don't really think you play that particular team. You should get looked at very well because they're kind of bad. So I'm not all in on I'm not all in on Denver. I actually think Lamar and the team is going to absolutely dominate the Broncos. Like, I mean, all of a sudden they're getting hyped because they beat the Panthers. Whoop dee doo. You beat probably the worst team in the league by a lot, like a lot of people have. Congratulations, you won nothing. You're getting smoked by a real team. I'm taking Baltimore, and I hate to.
Baltimore is first in yards per play. Denver is last in the NFL yards per play. That's the matchup we're watching this weekend, thanks to CBS, who posted that on their Twitter account today. But Denver's a sneaky team. It just depends what offense you get from Denver. Some For some reason, my brain's telling me an upset's going to happen once in a while. Give me
Hmm.
the upset here. Give me Denver over
Oh
Baltimore.
my God. Man just wants to watch the world burn, or he just wants to see the Bills get seated higher as Baltimore falls further. So I feel like that.
Cincinnati has another home game this weekend. They're 0-4 at home. They host the Las Vegas Raiders. Do
Oh,
they go 0-5 at home, or do they finally
Now,
get
they
the first
finally
win?
turn it around. I talked about it earlier in the quick takes. Give me the Bengals.
Yep. Jamar, you got to show up at some point. Joe Burrow, you got to show up at some point. The whole team has to show up at some point at home, and it's against the Raiders. As a matter of fact, you could probably, well, no, okay, I wouldn't even go that far. I was gonna say think of this Bengals defense as a streamer fantasy pick this week. No, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm taking the Bengals anyway because they gotta get it together somehow. But I mean, it is the Raiders. I
Yeah.
think they'll take care of business.
Cincinnati, if Joe Burrow says they have to win 7 last night, and he says it's doable, you have to win this weekend. If not, then it's not doable. You have to start by winning. In order for something to become doable, Cincinnati wins this weekend against Las Vegas. It's a clean sweep, so that means Las Vegas will automatically win by default. All right, Arizona and Chicago.
Oh my
Arizona is
goodness.
currently in the playoffs because they're at the top of the NFC West.
Somehow.
Chicago is just outside of the playoffs looking in. Who wins?
Arizona and Chicago. Where's this
Mhm.
game? In Chicago or Arizona?
Arizona.
Oh my.
Okay, then I lean the Bears. Or sorry, then I lean Arizona. I know the Bears are coming off of a very tough loss, and they might be inspired. I do think they have a slightly better defense, but I think the Cardinals are starting to figure things out. Murray's getting his connection with Harrison finally, so give me the Cardinals.
Hmm. I mean, we all know that the Bears lost on a freakish Hail Mary, courtesy of Jaden Daniels looking more like Jaden Rogers out there. But the fact that the Bears actually played the Commanders really, really tight, I think just goes to show more of it's any given Sunday or just any given day period. Anything can happen in the league. But honestly, I just think the Cardinals' passing attack, when they're in sync, is just deadly and disgusting unless your name is Christian Benford. So to that end, I am 100% taking the Cardinals in this game.
Either you guys will start taking the advantage over me, or my upsets will start making me look good. I'm taking Chicago this weekend. You know, I think Caleb Williams and that team's going to have something to play for. They're just right outside that playoff line, so they want to get back into the playoffs. Chicago, and how they get
Mhm.
back into the playoffs is starting to play more inspired football. They did it this weekend. And, Stevenson, just his ridiculous motion to the fans mid play, then decided to tip the ball. No Brown catches. It just freak play happened there. I think Chicago goes into Arizona and wins a close one. Let's go to the next game, 425 in Green Bay. Detroit, who put up 50 on the Tennessee Titans with Jared Goff not looking anything close to what Jared Goff can look like.
Goof.
Gibbs and Montgomery heads to Green Bay to face the Packers.
Game of the week.
It is. Connor, you go first.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah,
Okay.
you go first.
Well, first of all, yes, the Lions managed to put up 50 while Jared Goff did next to nothing to contribute. You know that meme where it goes, "I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part. I didn't do." You know what I mean? Yeah, that was Jared Goff at the end.
Yeah.
So I just think that was because they played the Titans, and the Titans are, well, bad. I would say the Titans are probably a bottom 5 team in the NFL right now. So to that end, I am going to say that the Lions put together a more efficient game plan for Jared Goff. And with Jordan Love's status kind of up in the air, I'm taking the Lions to win this game. And that's the only reason why I'm doing that, is because Jordan Love's status just seems kind of up in the air right now. Even if he plays, who knows what happens.
Yeah, he'll be hobbled. I mean, we saw how he played, not 100% against Minnesota earlier in the year. Even with a healthy Love, I think I would still lean Detroit because they kind of did the same thing last year. They lost a game or two at the beginning and started a little slow, and then they really just turned it on. So give me the Lions. And let's hear your
Mhm.
pick, Paul.
I'm going the Lions too. They look like the complete team. Even sometimes when Jared Goff looks off, they're still able to win games. I mean, they don't have Aiden Hutchinson, and that defense still looks pretty good. So, I mean, they're just a complete team, well coached team. Dan Campbell has this team, with the ceiling as the highest it's been in Detroit in a long, long time. So you got to get it. You got to get another statement win on the road in Green Bay in one of the most historic stadiums ever. Our final NFL pick before we go into our one college game is
Why are you
on
making me
Monday
do
Night
this again?
Football. Tampa has to go on the road to Kansas City. Do we have an
I
upset here?
my heart says Tampa, but without Godwin, without Evans, it's going to be tough. Now I know Otten has really stepped it up for them, and the Chiefs do give up big yardage to tight ends, but that Tampa defense is just brutal. And if
Mhm.
there's a get right game for Patrick Mahomes, it's against this Tampa Bay defense. So I think the Chiefs roll.
I hate to agree. I really, really hate to agree. So I'm going to disagree. I
I
like
knew
how
you would.
I like how everybody just kind of jumped when I said that. But no, for real, there's a reason why I know it's fantasy and I know it really doesn't translate that much to actual in-game analysis. But the fact that every fantasy guru is like jump on Kate Otten right now says a lot. He has looked really well the past few weeks. Been Baker Mayfield's number one option with Godwin being out and now Evans being out. And it's going to be, bad, but at some point the Chiefs' luck has to catch up to them. How many games have they won by one
Yeah,
score? It's been pretty much
5.
yeah, 5 games they've won by one score. Like, you're winning that much, you're more lucky than good. Your streak has to come to an end at some point. And if Baker Mayfield just bakes, Bucks are actually going to pull it off. I'm gonna just take the gamble and go Tampa Bay wins this game. And no, I'm really not trying to sound like a Chiefs hater because that's how it's kind of coming off. But no, I'm just being serious. I feel like if Baker just gets into a rhythm, hits Kate Otten often, and they open up the ground game for Rashad White, I mean, they could just cook in ways that I don't think we've seen anybody cook against Kansas City except Baltimore, and they even lost by a toe. So I'm taking Tampa Bay in the upset on Monday night.
Here's the thing with Kansas City. I think you're right. Their luck has to run out at some point. You know, do I think, the advantage here goes to KC because Godwin and Evans are out? Yes,
Hmm.
but Baker and that offense still look relatively okay without them two on the field. They gave Atlanta a pretty good game without both of them, and they just ran out of time at the end. Give me Tampa Bay in the upset here. I think it's going to be a one score upset. I think Tampa Bay gives them a game, but here we are. Tampa Bay has Kansas City has to lose once. They have to lose once. It has to happen at some point. I think this next 3-game stretch, they go Tampa, Denver, and Buffalo. I think this is probably one of their toughest 3-game stretches of the season, just based on who they're facing. Luck has to run out at some point, and I think it's going to start to run out just a little bit for the Chiefs here. It starts against Tampa Bay and a home loss. All right, the noon game on a Saturday, the only ranked game. Well, there's 2 ranked games on Saturday, but we're picking one of them. It's Penn State hosting Ohio State. This could potentially have Big Ten championship implications here. If Ohio State loses, they're probably out of the Big Ten race. If Penn State loses, it creates mass chaos in the Big Ten championship race because there's no divisions in the Big Ten. Because the Big Ten, even though Oregon is the best team in the country right now, they could still potentially miss out on the Big Ten championship game if things go a certain way. So, who wins this big game at college? Oh, is it College Station or is it State College? State College. It's State College out in Penn State.
I'm going to go with the home team. I think Happy Valley is a very tough place to play. And, I mean, I know there's been some close calls for Penn State as well, but I don't think this Ohio State is the same team. I mean, they very well could have lost to Nebraska at home last week against a team that got completely demolished by IU. So give me Penn State. I don't know if it's technically an upset, but if it is, it's not much of an upset other than Ohio State just having the name recognition. But give me the Nittany Lions.
So, yeah, they're the ones at home.
They are.
Yeah, I actually want to say the exact same thing. I want to take Penn State just because I feel like if you're playing in Penn State, I feel like that crowd is going to be very rowdy, and that will
maybe this will help you on your pick here, Connor. Penn State's ranked 3, Ohio State's ranked 4, but Penn State's currently a 3.5-point underdog.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking Penn State. Tell all the players that they're underdogs, despite being the higher ranked in the AP poll. I feel like they're going to come out swinging at that point. They did what?
James Franklin has a Ohio State problem. He also has a Michigan problem. But if he's going to get this team to the playoffs, he has to beat Ohio State this week. And I think he's going to beat Ohio State this week. And it will just cause more chaos in the Big Ten. Who doesn't like more chaos? I mean,
I love chaos.
Who doesn't like chaos in college football? Because next Tuesday is when the first college football poll rankings come out for college football. So
can't wait to see FSU not on the list.
Yes, for sure.
But there's the game picks this week. We'll see how it turns out. Either my 3 upsets turn into 3 losses, or they turn into me knowing more ball than the both of you right now.
Let's see about that. And it's a lot of good games coming up this week. So, I mean, the Bills can basically put the finishing touches on the division if our predictions hold up, and they can beat the Dolphins. It doesn't matter how. And hopefully we get a trade. So next week when we come on the show, we have more to talk about. But other than that, that should wrap the show up tonight. So with that, go Bills.
Go Bills.